Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you for agreeing to do this, for letting me talk to you about where you're from. So we can just start. We can just dive in. And I would like to ask you that please tell us, where are you from?
Yeah, I'm from Kashmir. I'm born and raised there, and now I moved away for my further education.
And
From the Indian part of the Indian Occupied Kashmir. I was born and raised there.
Okay, and you are Muslim?
Yes, I mean majority of the people over there are Muslims, so yeah, of course I'm a Muslim. We have some Sikh population, some Hindu and some Christian as well, but the majority is Muslim and then followed by Sikh population.
Okay. So can you tell me how is the life of an average Kashmiri?
I mean, it
Muslim
has
Kashmiri?
always been difficult, ever since you would say the actual resistance began, although it began in 1947, but back then people were not so aware of what's happening to them. So the resistance actually started in 1970s when people realized that what's actually going to happen, and they have been fighting for their right to self-determination. As you know that it's still, according to the UN, it's a conflict zone between the two countries, so none of it can claim it in entirety, both India and Pakistan. So they have been fighting for their right to self-determine, as in whether they want to have an independent country, whether they want to stay with India, or whether they want to stay with Pakistan. But every time, for example, the allies of India, they veto this thing in UN, and they have always prevented a plebiscite to happen. So initially people tried to resolve it with the diplomatic talks, with peace talks, but ever since that, nothing was going to, and some people even fought the elections under the Indian constitution, but they were rigged. They were highly rigged. After that, they lost any confidence back in this matter would be resolved, by peaceful talks. So there was the armed rebellion that started in 1987. So ever since then, the life has been, even before, it was not any good. They were really exploited, but now, the thing that from the Indian army, the occupation became more strong and more, there are a lot of human rights violations, human rights abuses happening. It did intensify with the armed rebellion that started. So
When did
I
that
was
start?
born, it started in towards 1989, 90s, and it kind of not ended completely, but it kind of was neutralized in 1995 when the allies of India back in Kashmir, they they neutralized it by different methods. There were actually a lot of reasons, so that's another big topic. So coming back to the present generation, like people who were born in 1990s and now they are adults. So there is another kind of the uprising that started in 2008. So most of the uprising that was from 1990 to 1995, people, all over the world, they say, okay, it was a help from Pakistan or from some other places as well, and that's right. There was the support, the armed support from Pakistan, in the sense that people got trained there. But now the current uprising that we see from 2008, it's all homegrown. So, and the result of that is because the atrocities committed by the Indian armed forces during the period in 1990s, and it has been continuing. In when there was a strong armed rebellion, the occupation tactics were very much strong. If you go back to the n number of massacres, be it the Gaukadal massacre, be it the Sopore massacre, be it the Kunanposhpora rape incident where the entire village was raped in one night. So those are kind of the nightmares. And then now the present generation, they saw all these kind of occupation tactics, the things that are happening all around this, how their lives were affected. So then in 2008, when India, and how the another kind of a rebellion started was that when India granted this generally, now we do not have this Article 37, but back then we were protected. That was actually removed on August 5, 2019. So non-Kashmiris could not purchase land in Kashmir. So, but they gave a lease to the Amarnath Yatra board who come to Pahalgam, like there is an Amarnath Yatra Shivling. The Hindus from different parts of India come to worship it. It's kind of a pilgrimage for them, but then illegally they were going to convert the lease directly into their name, directly in the shrine board name. And that's how it started, and people from all walks of life, all civilians, they were like against this move. And then followed like curfews, like strong clashes. And then one of the important thing was that anyone would, be it militant, be it not even, it was not necessarily that it was a political rally, but a normal rally, like where people would, protest against the atrocities that are being committed against them. And the tactic was that the Indian army would just open fire on them.
Even if it's a peaceful protest.
Yeah. Even if they are carrying the dead body of a martyr or dead body of a civilian. So these were the things that happened. Like we had in 2008 a very strong uprising, and the curfews. We have like months-long curfews. The study, especially schools are closed, universities are closed. You cannot move out of your homes. You have shot at sight orders. The Indian army has, and now like what they're doing, they are taking people out. Young children, they are accusing them of anything. It's the same mode that, for example, the Israeli tactics that they are doing in Palestine. It's exactly the similar kind of model, and in some cases it's even worse than that. And in 2016, so this kind, especially during 2008, so when the young people, like the young generation at that time, when they were picked up by army in the night, when they were beaten up, or people whose parents, for example, were shot in front of them, they were civilians back in 1990s when there was like a strong kind of strong occupation, I would say. And then this new, now that gave rise to a new generation of militants, a new generation of armed rebellion, which was kind of neutralized or silent for a while. It never ended, it was always there, but it was a bit silent since 1995. They were and so now it gave rise to another breed of new armed rebels who they were either productive, because then they were, if you read about the story of Burhan Wani, so like young people, like normal civilian young people, but they were so fed up, frustrated by the atrocities committed by the Indian forces that they had no choice left but to fight against the occupation. Or the people who were like children or brothers of people who were innocently killed during the 90 to 1995 militancy. So
how were they killed? Like these people?
Yeah, just normal. You have such incidences. There was a doctor. He was one of the renowned cardiologists of the valley. So he was leaving in the dead of after clinic at 8 in the evening. So he was on his scooty, and he was asked to stop, show your ID card. It's kind of very common over there. And then now after he showed the ID card, they were okay, just go. And then they shot him in the back. So there was a time during 92 to 90, just because there was actually a period between 92, 93 or 94 where they specifically targeted the intellectuals of Kashmir. So for example, doctors, for example, human rights, lawyers basically, who because they were fearing that they would in later speak about the human rights violations that Indian Army is conducting there. So that led to a new kind of, I would say, a new generation of militants who were, especially in the south of Kashmir, who were more active. And then And during 2016, Burhan Wani was killed. He was the militant commander, and then it was another big like curfew for like 6 months. People did not have, people did not have schools. They could not move out. They would, and now they have.
So wait, this was in 2016.
Yeah,
and you were in Kashmir at that time.
No, I wasn't. I was studying outside with my family.
And how was this curfew? Like, what could the people do or not
No, you can just not go out of your house. It's nothing. You can, just like after, like once a week, they give you some deal, like in the evening from 6 to 7. Now the shops are open. You can go out.
Only once a week you can leave your home.
Once.
Like, the whole week you cannot leave your home at all.
No, you cannot.
And what happens if you leave your home?
No, the army has the shoot at sight orders. If they see you out, they can shoot you.
Even if it's a woman or
anyone.
kid.
Anyone.
And have they ever like shot somebody that you have heard that they shot somebody?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So there was recently this incident in Sopore. So there was a grandfather and his grandson, so as man, and his grandson was a kid. So they were just walking. He took, for the breakfast they were probably going to get bread, and he took his grandson along in a car, and he was stopped by the army and police on the way. There was some encounter, and then they just told him to get out of the car, do like this, and then raise his hands up, and then they shot him from point blank range. And they said that
even though they were standing
and
like
the
this.
kid was like crying, wailing on the dead body of the father. The image was quite viral. At least in the Kashmiri media.
When they do this, like when they kill these innocent civilians, they have the right to do it? Are they like
army has the Indian army is protected by a law. It's Armed Forces Special Powers Act. It gives them immunity against everything. Whatever they do, they are never questioned. Yes, and it's exist.
Wow.
It was in Assam and in J&K, in Kashmir, but it's the only place where the Indian Army has this power.
Only in Jammu and Kashmir?
Yeah, because it was earlier in Assam, but Arunachal Pradesh, because they kind of say that there is infiltration from China and stuff, but now they have removed the article from there. But here in Kashmir they have immunity.
So army can do anything to the civilians and nobody can question them, not even the state of India?
No, nothing. They're
that's so violent. And okay, so have you ever experienced a curfew there?
Yes, of course, many times. So during a curfew, now there is another tactic that they have started doing since I think 2018 or 2019, that they shut off all the communication, like whatever, even if it's a minor thing. You might have heard about the great blackout that we had in 2019. It was horrible. Like for 1 year, there was no internet. For 6 months, there was no phones, nothing. I cannot imagine happening that in a modern world, and when India calls itself a democracy, it's a big joke.
That's not democracy at all. Not at all. So actually tell me a bit more about this 2019 curfew that they put. So before, because they were going to put the whole act into practice, and then
because now you had BJP in power, because they had this already in mandate that they would remove Article 370. But it's not so easy if you even go by the laws of India, like the laws of Indian Constitution. It's not so. The way they removed it, it goes even against the Constitution of India. Because it's not just a law that was created by Kashmiris or something. It's there it was there in the Constitution of India. Indians kind of made this law over there. So what happened, a couple of days before August 5, I think from August 1, they generated a circular, and they said that all the non-Kashmiris basically, because it was a tourist season at that time, be it tourists, be it Amarnath pilgrims, be it students who were non-Kashmiri students, because there is a possible terror threat over there, from Pakistan or from some other place. So you just vacate from here, so it's not safe and stuff. So in the 3-4 days, they vacated every non-Kashmiri from there.
Okay. Wow.
So like everyone, whosoever was there. They even manually checked in hotels if there was any non-Kashmiri or no, and then they just vacated everyone. They just sent them to the airport, that you're not allowed and stuff. So it was like, but now that people have been living in Kashmir, so they kind of understand. Every time there is something like this, they understand, no, it's something happening on the other way around.
Now something else is going to happen.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a rumor circulating. Maybe they are doing something with Article 370 and stuff. So people, because you have curfews over there, so people know how to. So they started stocking up, for example, rice, petrol, especially because if you have your car, but the petrol pumps are closed, if there is an emergency, you need to stock. So there were like long lines till midnight at the petrol pumps. Because it's kind of what there's something going to happen. And then after that, what happened was that on August 4 in the evening, there was an SMS that was sent to the people over there, like to all the people, that there is some emergency, and from the state, the telecom operators are advised to switch off. So now your phone would be switched off, like as in your network won't be working, so no calls you'll be able to make, and no internet. Okay, it stopped first.
So did they mention for how long will this be?
No, it's never mentioned. So
they just said it would be like that.
Yeah, and then after this, the next morning, August 5, at around 10 or 11 a.m. in the Parliament of India, they passed the resolution that they are, removing Article 37A. So you can imagine the thing that you are deciding about a whole population, around 8 million population.
Is not allowed to know anything.
Yeah, the phones are cut, the internet is cut, the landlines are cut, the TV is cut. You cannot even watch TV in your house. They even cut the TV cable connections. And before that, the mainstream politicians of Kashmir, who were kind of considered, before the puppets of Indian government over there, so they were actually also picked up by the police or the army, and then they were lodged in a hotel, kind of a jail. So because it's something, even though they were kind of puppets of India, but they would not even agree to this thing, because it's whether you are a bit pro-Indian in Kashmir or you are just like Kashmiri or stuff. So everyone, like every single Kashmiri would be against it. That's for, sure. So and then followed like a deep trauma for all the Kashmiris who were there. Because it's curfew. People, if one is staying in this house, he doesn't know what's happening outside, because it was a very, very stringent and a strict curfew. And it was very traumatic for the people who, like Kashmiris who live abroad, because they do not know what's happening to their family.
I have known somebody in Australia, and he had a friend. So she didn't know what is happening in the family. And
everyone. And people literally for 3 months, they did not know whether their family is alive or dead, whatever is happening. So there is no... the thing is that even, for example, Al Jazeera, CNN, they could not reach their correspondents back in Kashmir. They did not know. So there were no reports from there. But the Indian media was showing that, everything is fine, it's calm and this and this. But, we know that we cannot trust this. So since there was no report from any international media agency, and then if you go, you can check in the YouTube as well. So then the next, I think a week later, it was BBC released a video that showed that people after the Friday prayers, they had went into a procession, and the army is firing on them. And imagine, you do not know, you have no source to contact your family back in Kashmir, and then you see this kind of video. And then India refuted the claim. They were like, no, this is some old stuff, this never happened and stuff. But then BBC shared the GPS location at that time of that video, and then after 2 days they were like, this happened and stuff. So this trauma really continued. I cannot tell you
how long was this curfew?
But the good thing was that this curfew, I think the entire this without phones were restored I think in October, so August,
2 months.
September, October. It was, I think, after 3 or 4 months they resumed the phones, but only the postpaid connections. No, actually not phones. It was just the landlines that were opened or something, and phones were opened after 4 months or so. Like just first the postpaid phones, then the prepaid phones like 8 months later. And I think for internet they it was 1.5 year or 1 year.
1.5 year
Yeah,
without
no,
internet.
yeah,
all of
with no,
Kashmir.
yeah, entire
And
Kashmir.
nobody could access any kind of
Yeah, I mean
internet
there were
through
resolutions.
black
There
means.
was no. I mean there was some VPN usage and stuff, but I mean it did not really work so well. And then there was this thing, like there was pressure. I mean UN would release the statements, Amnesty International would release the statements. There was a genocide alert by the Genocide Watch in September 2019 for Kashmir, that maybe there would be a possible genocide. So these things, this was terrible. I mean, not only this, I mean, how it has hurt the economy of Kashmir so badly, because 1.5 year you are not doing anything. It's just that you're sitting at home. Like the business, with the tourism, the agriculture, it was like crashed. Now,
So
if you go back,
could you leave Kashmir or enter Kashmir in this?
yeah,
time
you
period?
could leave, but yeah, it was very complicated to reach and stuff, because you reach airport, but then you cannot. I mean, from airport you have to go to your house.
Yeah.
There is no car. You cannot call someone. There is no cab. Where would you go? I mean, if you live close to airport, maybe it's possible that after multiple checkpoints you reach. And that followed also a lot of scrutiny then on the Kashmiris. For example, there is one prominent, he was a journalist, a freelance journalist. He was working for DW before, and then he was freelancing in Kashmir. He is a Kashmiri. And after August 2019, there was nothing is working, do not have internet. He again got an offer to join DW. And
What's DW?
it's a Deutsche, it's a German television network, so Deutsche Welle, something like that. And then after that he was stopped at the immigration. He was not allowed to board. He was not allowed to go.
Go enter Kashmir.
No, go
leave
to Germany.
Kashmir. So he was stuck in Kashmir as well.
He was, yeah, I mean from Germany to Delhi, but from Delhi they did not allow him to immigrate. I mean they were stopped at the immigration.
Okay, so even though they stopped, like they cut your landlines, your phones,
Yeah, everything.
but their airport was still active. Like you could still leave Kashmir if
Yeah.
you want.
You could
Okay,
leave,
so
yeah.
they don't care. So how, and did they put like a curfew at that time as well, that you have to stay home or you can
Yeah, of course. It was a really hard curfew. I mean, even if you were leaving your home, for example, you wanted to go, the point is that you wanted to go, but how would you book the ticket? How would you leave out of your home? How would you do not know what's happening on the road? How would you justify? I mean, you have like lot of hundreds of checkpoints from your home to your way to airport. Like, how are you going to justify that, I'm traveling for an important reason or what?
you can't leave. What was the timing of the curfew that you couldn't leave? Like,
yeah, it was throughout. I mean, it was
the whole
not the
day
day
you can't
or
leave.
whole day,
so
night.
you can't leave basically.
Yeah.
You're stuck there,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
if the airport
Yeah.
is so-called
Yeah.
functioning or anything. Okay.
And also leaving, like, where would you go?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
where would you go? Where to? I mean,
Yeah. So this happened in 2019. So can you tell me like your personal experience at home, as like when you're there, when you go out at night, and if you're late?
it's
how do you as a family
terrible. I
experience
mean,
it for you?
because that now I do not live in Kashmir. I will tell you a personal experience. I called one of my friend, I mean, who is still in Kashmir, and I asked randomly, like, how's life going? She's like, do we have a life? I think we're just surviving. And you as a Kashmiri, when you are abroad, it feels very much, I mean, you feel very guilty because the people back home, how much they're suffering. And when you go back and then you realize that it's really a totally different world. And what's the reason? Like, why? What's the fault of us that we are suffering like this? What's our fault? Like, it's normal. You go in Kashmir, if it's like after it turns dark, it's not safe to move out, be it a girl or a guy. It's more, I think, more unsafe for guys, because there have been so many people that they have been just picked up by the army and their family know nothing about. They could not even find the dead body of their kid.
Really?
Yeah.
But they're gone.
Yeah, they are gone. That's why, I mean, if you read about, I mean, the happenings or the reports about it, so there is a particular term, half widows in Kashmir, because the people like who were married but their husbands, they disappeared. They were taken up by the army, but they have never seen their dead bodies, so they are termed as half widows, and there is a huge percentage of people who are there.
Half widows.
Yeah.
So they don't know even if they're alive or not.
Yeah, they do not know. If you read about this, she was even nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. It's Parvina Ahengar. We call her the Iron Lady of Kashmir. So it was actually her son who disappeared like this. I mean, she still does not know. And then when she was, running from one post to another, from police to army station to look for her son, but she could not find. And then she came up and she met other people, and then she saw that there are so many people who are actually like disappeared like this, and people do not know. Then she started an association, APDP, it's Association of Parents of Disappeared Person. So I mean, they have done a lot of commendable work.
And even children, like kids, boys.
Yeah, it's as young as 12, as young as 8 now they do it.
And why doesn't any bigger organization do
but
anything?
What? I mean, the UN issues statements, Amnesty issues statements, but they do not do anything on the ground. On the ground, there's
what
not
kind
really...
of statements do they issue that nobody even knows about?
Yeah, I mean, we condemn this, for example, for the internet. They used to issue like the statements almost every 2 months or so. I mean, we urge the Indian government to lift this communication lockdown or blackout, whatever you call it. Yeah, but on the ground, it does not change the lives of people.
Yeah. How is urging going to do anything?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you actually force them or threaten them.
There was, I believe it would have been much worse, but there was a bit, I would say, pressure also, maybe internationally, because the Kashmiri diaspora, like the Kashmiris who lived outside, they really organized a lot of demonstrations back in 2019 after this, so that at least people, they are aware about what's happening. Because if you move out and then you talk to people, they're like, is this really happening? No, I mean, they do not even believe that this can happen, because India is so concerned about its image abroad that they do not want that anything would come out.
Can you tell me about this new thing, which is the reason why, like, I would not want to reveal your identity or anything, this new possible boy
there are like a lot of laws now that you cannot anything, that any Facebook post, anything, even if it's normal, even if you just describe your experience, what you are going through, it's termed as it's against the national interest, and then they can have like some serious acts against you. Even it's UAPA, it's the Anti-Terror Act, where you cannot even have a bail. There are some people, journalists who have been booked under this act. Whereas there was even a photojournalist who used to just capture the pictures of what's happening and then publishing them, not even writing anything, not even describing what's happening. Just taking the pictures and publishing it. So she was booked under this act. So nowadays it's really, it's kind of, they put a knife on your throat when whenever you
what
speak.
about the act about if like somebody says something from abroad?
Then it's like if your family back home is like, working in the government sector, so they are responsible. So they're responsible for their actions, even if they are your relatives, they're your family abroad, if they are doing so. There is a proper law that now your family back home, they are responsible for your actions abroad.
Oh, so anything that a Kashmiri does abroad, like let's say he publishes anti-India...
No, it's not anti-India, it's anti-occupation.
Anti-occupation statements. Then the family of that person is going to be arrested?
Yeah, and it's legal.
Oh, that's legal.
Yeah.
And they've passed this law.
Yeah,
they can do it.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a proper order about it.
And has any big country said anything about it? Because how these Western countries always speak up about other nations which have a problem.
I mean, after August 2019, there was a European delegation coming to Kashmir, but it's always projected to them as a good side. But and also, if you look at the members who came from Europe, they're all from the right wing of right wing ideology. So you do not really expect anything from them. So
and can you tell me about this incident, that night rape incident that happened?
Yeah, you can go to it. It was the Kunanposhpora. It's actually a village in the north of Kashmir. It's in Kupwara. So in one night, the army
was this? Which year was this in?
It was in 1993 or 1992. I do not remember the exact year. So the army raided the entire village, and then they took hold of the girls. They just told it was a common practice those days that all the men of the village or the town or whatever place you cordon off, so you tell them to move out of your houses and we will check your houses, and then you have to be in a field or something in that area. So they did the same, and then they went inside the houses and they raped the entire village one night. It's estimated that 150, I mean the official records say some 50 or something, but the actual records is almost 150 women in one night.
And nothing happened to those people?
I mean, no, because they are army, as I told you, this their power and they are protected by this act, so nothing actually. I mean, there was an FIR lodged and something, but in practice nothing happened.
I have no words. And does anything like that happen now? Like, is there more, I would say, control or less? How would I say it?
No, I would
less
say it's
activities like this now, or is it? Do you still have this fear that this could happen?
Yeah,
or is
it's
it
always
lesser
there.
than before?
I think it's getting worse day by day.
It's getting worse.
It's getting worse because now it's more scrutiny. Now it's like people cannot even speak, even if it's something, because they have put these, as I discussed before, the laws that are enforced, that it's now difficult for anyone to even speak about it. Even if it happens, but I mean...
Wow, okay. I think most of my questions I have asked. Okay. However, there is one thing that I want to ask was about this village that they, I think, burned. I'm not sure if it was in... I think it was in Kashmir. I heard about it, but I'm not sure if it was in Kashmir.
There are many incidents that where they do this, but I mean a particular village. So there are a number of massacres, I would say. For example, it's a town in Sopor. It's in the north of Kashmir. So what they did there was, like, in 1993. It's still, I mean, they observe a complete shutdown. The date was on 6th of January 1993. Yeah. And then what they did is they blocked the entry and the exit points of the market, like at 9:30 in the morning, and then they burnt the entire market. And
for what reason? What was the...
So in the morning it had happened that a militant had taken a machine gun from an army person who was standing there, and just to retaliate, because they always assume that people support them, and what they did is just they blocked the entry and exit points of the main market. So there was a bus passing through. They just, the army just entered and fired along everyone. They just put like gunpowder over there and just put the entire market on fire. And later you could really, people could just find the burnt skeletons of their family members because they were trapped inside the shop. So
what I don't understand is that none of these people who do this, any kind of violent acts that have been committed towards innocent civilians, has any person ever been tried or
No.
held
No.
injustice?
No.
Okay, so now I want to know about your life, how you grew up, and how was your life in Kashmir. The good also.
So I would say that I grew up in when militancy was like almost kind of neutralizing, say towards 94, 95. So like the worst period of the armed rebellion had already passed. But then after that we would see, like, you know, often when we would go to school there used to be a hartal or a curfew or, you know, encounters near our place where, you know, you were confined to your house and you hear gunshots and somebody has been killed or
Really?
something. Yeah, so it was kind of, you know, we grew up in that kind of an atmosphere. Or you hear, okay, someday, you know, something is happening in the market and then there was a grenade blast and people got injured, they were killed, I mean, they died because
How
of
old
that.
were you when this happened?
This was frequent. I mean, all through my childhood,
And you heard these blasts?
Yeah. Also, I mean, I know people who died because of these incidents. So
you know them like personally?
Yeah. So it was like this when I was in high school. So this was kind of when I was in 8th grade of my high school. So then it was like not 8th, actually 10th, yeah. So that was when the first kind of an overall resistance again started, like full blown resistance that was by common people, as I discussed earlier, when because of this Amarnath Shrine Board, so people from all walks of life participated. So what they did, India, in retaliation, they stopped, because, you know, it's landlocked, they stopped the flow of goods from India, or we could not even send our produce to India because like it's, for example, we produce apples over there, so you could not send. So as a mark of
stop was by the
from
resistance
India,
or by the
from
Indian?
India.
Okay.
Because when people protested about this land lease to the Amarnath Board. And then what happened, as a mark of protest, people from, you know, Baramulla, it's closer to the border in Udi, like to Muzaffarabad. So they marched, the people were like, okay, if they are not letting us sell our produce, send it to India, so we send it to Pakistan, because it's also closer, like geographically. So they marched, it was kind of as a sign of protest. So lots of people from Sopore and Baramulla, they marched towards the LOC, kind of. They were still on foot, and they were still far. And there was one of the leader who was kind of leading the protest, and the army opened fired over there, and that leader passed away. So that started kind of another, you know, new wave of revolution or rebellion, I would say. And then followed like a lot of clashes with the Indian army, with like as a sign of protest. They used stones, like people, they did not have any weapons. So when army was firing with guns, so people used stones to throw at them. There was also one of the very popular protests about when they would, you know, take the Indian flag and then you know, just put it under their feet, and they would say like ragdo ragdo kind of. So it was these were different like marks of protest, I would say. And then like saying that you're against the occupation. So it was also curfew. Then there were many, then they would, you know, have a curfew, and then people would just go out, march in large numbers, you know, to go against that curfew. So these were different marks of protest, that we are not accepting this occupation. So, and it was when, for example, I was in high school, and then people did not have classes. I mean, for 6 months, from June to November, they had no classes at all. Students, I mean, you know, they had to resort to, at that time, internet was not so common in Kashmir. So it was not so accessible to everyone. and then it was difficult for people to study and to pass their exams. Yeah, it became quite difficult. And then again, in 2011, I think, or 2010, there was another wave of protests like this. Also, like there was this young guy who was Tufail Mattu. So I was from Srinagar, a young, really, I think 8 or 10-year-old kid. He had gone for, after his tuition, after his classes, he had went for playing cricket, and then he was the lone child of his parents, and then he was killed by the army there. So
and why was he killed? Was he protesting?
No,
or?
Nothing. He was just going to play cricket. So that sparked another, like 2 years later, another round of protests where you had, like, again the same thing, curfew. I mean, imagine you're in your precious years of school, you need to learn, and you just have your books. I mean, you have no teacher, you have no one, you cannot go anywhere.
So, like, has it
of course
ever happened with you that you had to not go to school for...
No. I mean, read everything at home.
Okay, so
it was lucky that I mean, I had some I come from an educated family background, so I would go ask someone, my cousins, the people who were closer to my home, not like I could travel, say, like 2 kilometers away. No, someone, or in the neighborhood there was someone who to whom I could go and ask. And this is possible only in the uptown. If you go to the old town where the police and all are most strict, people cannot even move out of their houses. So in the uptown they're a bit lenient, but in the old towns they're generally more strict, and it's more difficult. If you read about how the atrocities, like how the strictness is in the old town of Srinagar, it's pathetic actually.
Okay, so how much time do you think you spent out of high school because of these protests? Like, because I remember in Pakistan when we had these around 2008, also the same, we had a lot of terrorist attacks in Pakistan as well. So I remember I was in grade 10 and there was this attack on the I think it was Sri Lanka or South Africa, cricket team. They came to play cricket and our school was very next to the stadium, and suddenly we heard this big blast, and like even the windows of our schools, some, I don't know if they broke or not, but everybody got like, and before we could process this one blast, there was another one. So then there were rumors that blast, this, that, so some said it happened here, there, so everybody started panicking. It's on. So that everybody started panicking that, I know somebody who's my parents come from there, XYZ. So it was a girls' school, so everybody was so worried. And then suddenly came and we weren't allowed to have phones at school, so we were asking teachers, like, can we make a call or something like that. And then the news, like, rumors began that the terrorists are like now, like, they're just hiding somewhere, so there's like an open fire, like, so the police is looking for them, so they may hide in a school or something. And
I can imagine.
So I just called like my mom from some teacher's phone just to, like, tell her that we're fine, and her assistant answered and she's like, she already left to pick you. And I was like, what is her problem? Like, tell her to stay home. Like, the people are on the street, like those terrorists and the police, and I mean, it's just something not safe. I got so, but you cannot stop my mom. So anyways, she came, and a lot of other parents were also there, and like they found even gunshots in our school. Later, I don't know how they ended up there, but that was one of the, like, I can say, a first-hand experience I had, like, with, otherwise, like, that in whole 1 year we had more than 360 blasts in 1 year in Pakistan, but not any that I, like, experienced myself except for this. So, and you also mentioned, like, in 2008 things happened in Kashmir also, like, I didn't know, but our school, it was still like open. I think maybe students didn't go the next day or anything. I don't remember if it closed, and even if it did, it was probably for like 2 days or something. So
No, it's like for us, it was like normal, like as you said, that I mean, I can tell you, like, say, if not thousands, but hundreds of times when, you had an exam and it gets postponed because there is a blast, there is something happened on the way, or sometimes you go in the morning to school and then they tell you it's closed because it's a curfew now or stuff.
So in curfew, schools also closed.
Of course.
You're not even allowed to go to schools.
Not at all. Or even something happened close. Or once I remember, I was really a kid back then. I was in my kindergarten and there was an encounter near our school and very close. And then I remember like all of and you could hear the gunshots, and then we were told by our teachers, like, we lie down flat on the ground so that I mean, if some gunshot pierces through the building, I mean, no one is hit. So these are the experiences, like every kid, I mean, any kid you talk to who studied in Kashmir, like did his schooling there, I mean, he will have similar, I mean, n number of similar kind of experiences.
Oh my.
And then, when this happened during, I mean, high school, like 2008, 2010, it was like too much. Like curfew, like for months, students are not going to the school. They have nowhere to go. And then now it's following. This cycle is really following now. I mean, especially since August 2019, and then now it's the COVID lockdown and all. It's been 3 years that students haven't, I mean, they are not going to school properly. I mean, it's terrible. And imagine, I can relate to you like this. Imagine it's the COVID lockdown, you cannot move out, and you do not even have the internet. How would you feel?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
and
like
you cannot
that.
meet anyone.
Yeah,
it's
it's just, I mean, it's just because COVID imagine 1 year before COVID, you have the same situation in Kashmir. It's like kind of a COVID lockdown. You cannot go out, you cannot meet anyone, but you do not, on the top of it, you do not have internet as well. On the top of it, you're scared about your safety as well.
Yeah, that's even worse. So you couldn't even meet your like family in curfew, like if in that one day when you can actually go and buy something. I mean, you can't even meet somebody because you have how many, like a few hours?
No, and
So
people
how
just
often do you meet your family, like in Kashmir, generally?
Generally, I mean, it
curfew,
depends. I mean, if you are close by, then maybe like once a week, or but it depends if you really live far away, and it's like if it's like. And people tend to live close to their relatives generally over there because of these situations. Because if your family is close by, this, and then you at least have the support, like the emotional and the mental support of other people around. So they do not really. I mean, it's very rare that you would have, like, you would just have like one or two relatives who are out of the town or out of the city. Mostly, like, they tend to marry like within the same place, and then it's like most of the people live close by.
Because of COVID, how people had to isolate themselves, not meet anybody, it had such I would say unseen effects that you cannot possibly predict them unless you actually go through them. Like the kind of isolation that people actually felt while being alone, because even if they wanted to go see a friend, the friend would be like, no, like COVID hai bhai, mat aao bhi, theek hai na. Especially since I was in Leuven, so I asked people there that and their experiences were like this, and so many people went into depression. Some people even got a bit crazy, they were like, they started thinking that maybe I'm somebody else, like I need to rediscover who I really am. And even for me as a person, like, the isolation, I'm lucky enough that I didn't feel too much of it because I was able to go back. But even in Pakistan, when you have this thing in your head that, okay, we cannot meet anybody, we have to be very, subtle about it. It has some impact on you mentally as well.
Yeah, of course.
And a big impact. And now after COVID, and thanks plus social media, people have kind of forgotten how it is to interact in one-to-one with the person in person.
Yeah, of course.
So this is such a big such a big side effect, I will say, or consequence of this thing, that you cannot ignore it. And now, even though the lockdown doesn't exist in Belgium, people still kind of feel isolated and not connected with other people, because I think even if somebody wants to, they don't really remember how it was. And imagine like people in your condition. So when the first lockdown was put because of COVID, people said that, oh, now people will see how Kashmir feels and this and that. But no, they cannot feel, because your lockdown was way worse. The only lockdown that we had was, okay, stay at home. That's it.
At least you have every comfort. You feel safe. I mean, at least you are connected over. I mean, the communication blackout was something. I mean, that was, I would say, traumatic for everyone. It was terrible.
And in these lockdowns, what's the worst that can happen to us? Somebody finds us on the street, they charge us 250 euros. What happens in a Kashmiri lockdown? They kill you. Like, there is no comparison. You can't even say that, oh, now the world feels how Kashmir feels, because the world does not feel. We cannot. I don't think anybody can put ourselves in your shoes of how that lockdown was. And I think after this lockdown and through this talk, I found out that, okay, you guys had so many lockdowns before. At least me, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in Pakistan at least were not aware of this, that so many lockdowns are happening all the time in Kashmir, and what kind they are. It's super bad. I hope things get easier, but I'm happy to know that there is a normal side as well. And
of course.
Like, you are still allowed to go to school. So do you have like a all girls school, or is it private, public?
There are like I studied in a co-ed, but there are like all girls schools as well, but very less. I mean, it's not so common.
And how is the education there generally? Like, is
it was really good. I mean, the standard of education was really good, but these past things with the lockdowns and all, it's really going a lot worse. And
and are there any universities in?
There are a couple of I mean, it's still. I mean, based on the population, there are really less, but it's still okay. It's not so. I mean, it's. I would say that there is just one big university in Kashmir. There is a lot of. I mean, if you compare to other cities of India, it's less in comparison to the population, but it's still. But because of this, I mean, these lockdowns actually had a lot of impact on the education. A lot, I would say. And now it's because, like you see, in the past couple of years, Kashmiri people have spread a lot across the globe. Because earlier they were more focused, I mean, they were going to India for education. And now that they do not feel so comfortable, so safe, I would say, because of the things that happened, because of the CAA, NRC, and then the attack on the Jamia Millia University. Now they are moving really to other places, a lot to other, I mean, especially, say, US, Europe, or Australia, or whatever,
So do people want to move out? Why don't, most Kashmiris want to move out of there if it is so hard to live there?
No, because if they move out, they already lose. I mean, that's what, for example, the occupier wants. That, I mean, they do not care about the people. They just care about a piece of land. So if the Kashmiri people leave, so the land is all open to them. I mean, why would it's your right, I mean, to protect your birthplace, to protect where you are. I mean, that's your identity at the end of the day.
And it's where, like, your whole people who share the same identity share the same place, and if you disperse, then you don't have a common place.
Since, I mean, so many generations you are living there, you're everything. I mean, I will ask you, for example, will you be able to find a home somewhere else?
Of course,
I mean, no
not.
matter.
You will always be a second citizen anywhere else. So, and what about the other minorities? Like, so Muslims are a majority. So, do the minorities also suffer the same thing that you guys suffer? The Sikhs or the Hindus?
it's the same thing. I mean, we mostly have Sikhs and Christians over there. Like Sikhs actually. I mean, some Christians also, but it's the same. I mean, they share the same opinion.
They also suffer the same consequences. And okay, and how do you feel when somebody calls you an Indian?
No, I'm not an Indian. I mean, unfortunately, we do hold an Indian passport, but we are not Indians. I mean, it's clearly, I mean, if you go by the international terms and this, it's Indian Occupied Kashmir. So
That's what it's called?
yeah,
Indian Occupied
yeah,
Kashmir?
I mean, prefer to say it Indian Occupied, but in the international terminology, it's Indian Administered Kashmir and say Pak Administered Kashmir. So because it is a region of conflict, I mean, according to UN, they at least acknowledge it. I mean, they acknowledge it, but they do not do anything on the ground. That's a different story. But
And what are your views about the Pak side of Kashmir? How is life there different
I feel
from your life?
that I mean, because I haven't been there, I met a couple of people from there, but I think the only difference, you know, ultimately freedom is something else. There was like a quote by one of a Kashmiri leader. He told India that even if you quote, you know, fill our roads with gold, but still we will speak about for our right, because you know, right to self-determination. I think the only difference between India and the Pak administered Kashmir is that in the Pak administered Kashmir, for example, there are not so much of human rights violations. I mean, they do not suffer. Maybe or maybe not they are happy. They maybe or maybe not they want to, you know, stay with Pakistan, or they also want to have a separate this. It's a separate thing. But when we talk about these things, this oppression, these human rights violations, I do not think that they are to that extent over there. It's like it's more, I mean, much to a greater, higher extent in, or maybe it's not there existing at all, but at least in the Indian Occupied Kashmir it is like well documented as well.
Yeah, I don't think it is as documented in as much detail as you've told us, because the world is not that much aware. The world does not speak about it as much. Like simply the act that in which India is saying that they have the right to arrest your family if you are speaking bad about them outside, and the fact that nobody is talking about it is very hypocritical, especially of the West. I mean, they talk all about always China. Oh, it is so oppressive. The people of China are not allowed to speak against their country, blah blah blah. Although these rules exist for every country, even in US, so many people have been barred from entering US because they find some anti-US things on their social media or something. So why aren't they saying anything about Kashmir?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a fact that it depends if it's of their national interest or if it's of their interest and different. I mean, they have, for example, India has its own allies. Then of course US has been an ally of India now, so of course they would not speak, although they I mean the talks were there in the US house, the parliament or whatever. So but the point is that it's always, I feel, the common people who suffer a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, they are the people who suffer in the end, whatever it is, wherever it's happening, be it war, be it conflict, be it anything. It's ultimately them. I mean, right now, I think if you give like Kashmiri people a choice, so they would say for an independent nation. And I mean, there was a pro-Pak sentiment, there is still. But it's decreasing day by day, and it decreased a lot during Musharraf, where it was, you know, this different point agendas where it was more like compromising on our rights and stuff. So after that, it really, I mean, decreased to a certain extent, where people were like, we just want an independent state. I mean, but now if it's like, even if it's a choice to choose between India and Pakistan, maybe majority of the people would go for Pakistan that way. But yeah, it's on ground, things are not so easy as is. Like there was also like a solution offered that India, I mean, because of just to avoid these human rights violations and all abuses, so they were like, put your army on the borders. I mean, if you're so worried about, say, for example, Pakistan, China or something, so keep your army in the borders, but don't let them interfere in the civilian life. So we can have a separate police who is like,
exactly.
you know, for example, in Italy, you have the carabinieri who are like just for the civilian purposes. So have something like that. But I mean, they did not agree. I mean,
they just okay. And so, how would you? ये अब question है, if you want to answer. You know. How would you compare the situation of Kashmir with that of Palestine? Like the similarities or the differences?
It's almost, I mean, although historically it's different.
Yes, of course.
Because they still have their passport. I mean, it's still recognized as a country in many places. But since like in Kashmir, case of Kashmir, if you go back to the history, it was I mean, back then there was no like a passport or kind of the country convention and stuff, so it wasn't so. It isn't. I mean, historically, I would say different. I mean, historically they are different. But
I mean,
the way the
part.
Occupation, it's. I mean, you know, I mean, India is a strong ally of Israel, so they share intelligence. They share. I mean, a lot of Indians in the army, they go for training to Israel. So the mode of occupation is absolutely similar, and in some cases it's even worse.
How so?
Because at least in Palestine you have some representation. I think it's not like you know, you still have some voices. I mean, people, you are heard at the international level.
Exactly.
Where, as in case of Kashmir, there is a lot of lack of representation at the international level. And also, like, also the modes of resistance in Kashmir are like somehow influenced by Palestinians. There is a lot of pro-Palestinian sentiment back in Kashmir. Because, I mean, they kind of, you know, empathize with the Palestinian people because they are going through the same thing. So, yeah, it's also that, you know, when you say that why people do not move out of this, because that's what the occupier wants. That's the same thing. So, we know, I mean, we are not so powerful. Sooner or later, maybe we are going, but at least if you are not fighting back, you're already losing. So
but it's not a fight, right? It's like military.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a fight. I mean, it's not a fight. It's just an oppression. I mean,
so what do you guys think, like Kashmiris, like how do you guys think you can do something for this? Like what is it that, you know, that's common thought between the Kashmiris that you can do that? Okay, we can do this. This can maybe have an impact on us.
I think, I mean, although there have been, it's like no decision can be made without, I mean, every time there has been a decision, for example, where I told you, like, people went against Pakistan during Musharraf's rule, for example, they came into talks with India, but then they avoided a major section of Kashmiri people who were kind of separatists. They, like, you know, they picked and chose people who were kind of ideologically similar to them, but not, I mean, they did not represent Kashmiri people. So, and they had talks with them. What does that mean? I mean, if they are not representing Kashmir, actually, like, how would they decide on their behalf? So, it's, I think there are, I mean, you have to always, wherever, I mean, it can be resolved by peaceful talks, but, you know, looking at the situation, India is never going to give up. Because, I mean, they are also a nuclear power. It's not, also we know the consequences of war, so we are really not in a, you know, we do not want people to suffer because of war on both the sides, whatever it is. But at least for the moment, I mean, because we really had a lot in the past 20 years, at least let us live a normal life. I mean, let us live a peaceful life, whatever you're going to do, okay, but stop at least these human rights violations, these abuses, this stop treating us as third class citizens.
what I don't understand is why is this not being raised as a problem internationally?
Yeah, I mean, there are people tried a lot, then it's like the momentum is lost. For example, in August 2019, there was
Yeah,
a
it
lot
was
of
a
people,
hype. Everybody
yeah.
knew about it, but then it just
But
died
then,
down
yeah,
after
the
a few weeks.
momentum dies down after some time. So, but yeah, there is also, I mean, for example, media controls a lot these days. So you have the Indian media who portray a totally different image, of the normalization that no, everything is fine, it's normal in Kashmir and stuff. And then and especially after, you see, like after 2019, maybe there have been a lot of major events in the, and West is always put in the limelight. Whatever even minor thing happens, okay, they get the attention, and then nobody really cares about the third world countries.
Okay. But but no, thank you very much for sharing everything. And yeah, I'm still unable to process this fact that whatever is happening in Kashmir, it's so similar to the situation of Palestine. And like, just take this recent lockdown of 2019. I mean, I heard about it. I was at home and we were like, oh, like there's a lockdown in Kashmir and blah blah, and they're making this amendment. And then after, like, okay, it was people talked about it 1 week, 2, 3 weeks, and then nobody knew about it because you stop hearing about it. So you automatically think, oh, maybe it must have been lifted. Yeah. Like, I didn't even know that it went on till a year.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody who follows the news very, like, diligently, maybe that person knew, but any normal person who doesn't watch the news, like, has things to... Nobody knew. So for like 1.5 years, you were living in a lockdown.
Yeah,
cared,
that's what I'm
knew.
saying. One of the reasons is that there is really a lack of representation at the international level about Kashmir, because one of the reasons is that India is really concerned about its image abroad. They really try to restrain any voices who go and speak. For example, Kashmiri students who go outside to study. I mean, I've heard stories from other people who during immigration, when they see their dress, of course, at the Indian airports, and then they see that they ask you what, although they have all the information beforehand, because as a Kashmiri you're always under scrutiny
more than the other Indians.
Indians are not generally under scrutiny. You're always, they have all the details, everything about you. And then when you go for immigration, if they say that, for example, I'm going to study law, or I'm going to study this international relations, they're asked like another for half an hour, 15 minutes. They are stopped at the immigration, just to assess if this guy is going to say something. If he studies, of course, people studying law, and then they go in this direction, they speak out, they write, they become, for example, also for journalists. So, people who are in a profession where they get a good platform to speak out and their voice is heard, so it's a problem then.
So, do they allow, so let's say if a Kashmiri student wants to go abroad to study journalism, so, and they check them at immigration?
Generally there hasn't, unless you're an active journalist. For example, I told you recently, in the previous couple of minutes, about this guy who got an offer in a German TV and he was refused to board. But he was an established journalist. But till now I haven't heard that any student was stopped. Not stopped at all, but they are generally, interviewed really a lot at the immigration.
They have to tell at immigration which university they're going? Or
yeah, of
they
course.
have to tell everything.
They ask these questions.
Like, no other student would be asked.
Generally they aren't asked, but for Kashmiris it's a bit strict.
And this discrimination is like, okay, nobody talks about
nobody
this.
talks about this.
Wow. Everything you told me is like, for me it's...
This is then kind of you're used to it, because you cannot do anything about it.
But thank you so much for sharing your time and your information with me and everybody who hears it. Hopefully somebody will pray, you know. I
Yeah,
hope everybody
hopefully
who's
things
listening,
would
they pray for
change.
for the Kashmiri people, that, you know, God gives them freedom and fairness and, like, you know, peace. And somebody actually does something, you know, like takes it into notice in a way that it actually, like, it's not just a, you know, a statement on a paper. It is actually something. I mean, it's good that the UN issued some statements. That's also, I would say, a big thing, because they don't usually even do that for really big things. But I'm glad they did that. Hopefully they will do something else as well. And yeah, and I hope Kashmiris, I mean, they keep trying, and, you know,
at least get justice.
So thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum.